some strong political reaction to what happened. President Putin's spokesman, Dmitry Peskov, has called on the Ukrainian government to investigate who was behind the killing.
A tragedy has happened. A Russian citizen has been killed, leaving a large family without anyone to care for them. We offer our condolences to his friends and family. We resolutely condemn this murder. We hope for a real investigation that won't be just for show, but will seek to find those who are behind this murder. Lately, Ukraine has unfortunately become a very unsafe place for journalists. Many people, many journalists, die there. Journalists are being expelled from the country, jailed for journalistic activity. We think this is unacceptable, and we think that this should become a topic for some very strong international reaction, which will move the Ukrainian government to take effective measures to correct this situation.
Well, that's President Putin's spokesman, Dmitry Peskov. Listening to that and joining us live is Ukraine's ambassador to the UK, Natalia Galibarenko. Thanks so much for being with us, Ambassador. So respond to what you hear from Dmitry Peskov there. In particular, can you reassure him that the investigation into this killing will be thorough?
Oh, of course, I can reassure not only him, but all Ukrainians and also international community that this is our primary interest to investigate properly the case. But my maybe a concern is that Russia is trying always to depict situation as this is the Ukraine that should be blamed for this murder. However, I would like to remind him and other people who are tending to blame Ukraine that that Mr. A.Babchenko was already the fourth dissident who was killed in Ukraine for 2 last years. And he was critical about the Russian government and Russian authorities' policy, but not about Ukraine.
One killing in Ukraine that people are raising, in addition to this one, is of the journalist from Belarus, Pavel Sheremyet, who was killed in a car bomb a couple of years ago in Kyiv. Some of the people that don't feel confident in the investigation of the authorities in Ukraine point to that case, having not been solved yet, as fueling their misgivings about this investigation.
You know, the problem is that the murder of Mr. Pavlo Sheremet and I'm afraid also of former MP Mr. Voronenkov and also this case with Arkady Babchenko is a very high-profile political murder. And in this case, like in any country, it's very difficult to investigate the whole chain, starting from the perpetrators and going back actually to the roots and to the people who ordered the murder itself. So that's why there are many also channels and traces going back to Russia, indicating that also some Russian people were involved in the murder of Mr. Pavlo Sheremet. But I can assure you that law enforcement bodies of Ukraine are doing their best to investigate and to bring those guilty to justice.
And you mentioned Denis Voronenkov, who is a former Russian MP who was shot dead outside a hotel in 2017. Your government's already pointed the finger at Russia. Is that based on any evidence or merely an assumption?
It is based on evidences because maybe, as you know, that the physical perpetrator of this murder was wounded during the murder scene when actually the bodyguard of Mr. Voronenkov was able to shoot him. And that's why the investigation was based actually on evidences of a witness. But the problem is that when we submitted to the Russian Federation an appeal to help us at least in having a specific investigation with people involved in Russia, we received the response, no.
And so you're talking there about that killing last year. What about the one last night? Again, the finger already being pointed at Russia. Is that based on any evidence so far?
You know, I think that it's quite premature to say at this point that Russia should be blamed for this murder because I stand against any speculation on the matter just for the political reasons. However, I cannot neglect, as I mentioned at the beginning of my interview, that it's very difficult, just to neglect that these people who are critical about the Russian government, who fled from Russia, and they were trying to hide in Ukraine, they were killed in these two last years.
Well, the Prime Minister of Ukraine has already talked about the Russian totalitarian machine, in his words, being behind this on social media.
That's correct. He already pointed out. But again, this is not based on physical evidences obtained so far, but more on the like already a bad tradition established by the Russian Federation to eradicate and to eliminate people who are critical of Russian government.
Now, if there is somebody listening to this who is right now in Ukraine, is a journalist there, what can you say to reassure them about their safety today?
My main message is that Ukraine for years have become a state where we respect the freedom of speech. And that also the fact that Mr. A.Babchenko and Mr. Varanyenko, and that they all abandoned Russia and came to Ukraine for their temporary living shows that they believed in our country, that they can use their talent as a journalist and also to be protected by the state. However, they maybe were quite, naive about the methods that Russian government can use against them. I mean, recent events also on the UK soil also shows that Russia has a very big hand.
And you're talking there, referencing the Sergei and Yulia Skripal case. The UK government has blamed Russia for that. Thank you very much indeed for being with us on the programme. That's Ukraine's ambassador to the UK, Natalia Galibarenko, speaking to us live on that story of the murder of Russian journalist A.Babchenko in Kyiv. We'll talk more about that later on this edition of NewsHour.